So this is the Word Show, and it's 5:07, and I have Aaron. Aaron, how do I pronounce your last name?
Well, you can say it however you want, but I say it Caruthers.
Caruthers, okay. And Aaron, what do you do for, what is your position and what do you do?
I'm the Executive Director of the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. The State Council on Developmental Disabilities is an entity that exists in federal law and state law. We're created by Congress. There's a council like ours in every state and territory. And we're here as an independent entity that's the State Department to find barriers that keep people with developmental disabilities from living fully integrated lives in the community. Find out what those barriers are and try to remove them or work around them.
And how long have you been doing this type of work?
Well, I've been working in policy for the State Assembly, for the State Senate, for California's Attorney General, for 2 governors for over 20 years now. But I'm very glad to be here with the State Council in this role for the last 6 years.
And what can we expect? What kind of cuts are we going to be expecting because of COVID-19? I know you said something over to the policies, what's going on and what's not happening. A lot of people who have disabilities are kind of worried about that. I'm one of them. So what can we expect that's going to happen?
Well, the governor on last Thursday released a budget. And in that budget, he's pointed out that COVID-19, with everybody staying home, people not spending, not earning, not traveling, the tax revenues for the state have dropped to the point where they thought they were going to have a surplus in just a matter of months, realized that they're going to have a $54 billion deficit. So this is about, I think, 33 to 37% of the budget right now. That's a big number. It's not the biggest. I mean, dollars-wise, it's the biggest, but percentage-wise, it's not the biggest. In 2009, we remember that. I think that was a 56% deficit in the budget, so over half. Still a big number, still very scary. And the governor, well, he got to benefit, and we all got to benefit from past leaders. Past leaders who went through the deficits hope that, well, they hope we never have to go through it again, but if we did, they wanted to build up some reserves. So since 2009, whenever there's been a little extra money, they put it over into their savings account, their rainy day fund, as they called it. They actually made multiple ones. There were 3 different ones. And pulling them all together, there are $18 billion in there. So the governor proposed a number of different options to try to close that $54 billion gap. Some of it is to draw on the $18 billion rainy day fund. That's what the savings account is for. The other is to raise taxes and other revenues. So that was to think about $4 billion in there. The federal government has given the state some money already through the CARES Act. That's the one where many people were getting, some people were getting stimulus checks. That also provided resources for states for a number of different options. So the governor's finding ways to draw on that to cover some of the gap. In what remains is $14 billion hole. And that hole will be filled either by Congress passing more support for states, or if they don't, there'll be cuts in different programs. So our first effort should be contacting Congress and say, please give the states the supports they need. This is a critical time. It affects every part of our society. It affects education, it affects schools, it affects law enforcement, it affects people with disabilities, it affects roads, it affects everything. So if we're thinking about where do we put our energy, that's the first place. After that, the state's talking through how the cuts would happen. I've got a couple of values or principles when we're in this situation. When a budget no one wants to put out a budget with deficits, because every time there's a cut, there's a person behind that dollar. There's a life behind that dollar. There's hopes, there's fears, there's needs behind those dollars. So when they put out a budget, there's some things I look at, and one of them is, are they sharing the pain across the whole budget? Or is it just falling on the backs of people with disabilities? Is it just falling on our heads? When I looked at this budget, I looked at the other parts of the budget too. And interestingly, we did pretty well. Overall, the Health and Human Services budget was proposed to increase by 8%. It's the only part of the budget they proposed an increase. Every other part of the budget proposed a decrease. So for example, the governor proposed closing 2 prisons. I can't remember the last time I heard a governor propose closing a prison. So the other parts got cuts. Health and Human Services got an increase. I looked inside the Health and Human Services budget because that includes IHSS, that includes DDS, that includes CalFresh, includes all of those services that we need. And I thought, well, how did the Department of Developmental Services do? So if we think about who's receiving regional center services, was that more or less? And the Department of Developmental Services actually proposed for a 9% increase, about $775 million. So yeah, so almost $750 million are proposed for the Department of Developmental Services to have an increase, and that's largely due to growth. They're still expecting another 15,000 people to be new regional center clients. It's due to the planned minimum wage adjustment that's still supposed to go into effect, so it'd fill those roles. So overall, it could have been a whole lot worse. That doesn't mean it's not bad, because
Right.
now we're starting to see the details of what some of those cuts would look like and what some of those service programs would be cut, because there's still $470 million that they need to cut out of programs.
So for us, for people with disabilities, how can we stop getting these cuts? How can we go to the next step and get our voices heard? I was telling you maybe we could do like some series of podcasting, you and me, we could set it up, and then I have a lot of followers on Facebook, over 5,000 people. We could just like maybe get the message somehow out there, because I know there's a lot of people who don't have the services that they need to get and they're struggling. So that's what I'm looking at. Maybe we could reach out to help other people to try to get the resources that they need and not to get the cuts that are coming. So I know it's a tough time. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's scary when they talk about cutting IHSS by 7%. That's scary. When they talk about other cuts to programs that we critically need, it's life and death for some people.
Yeah.
Whether it's name a program, and there'll be proposed reduction for it if these cuts from Congress don't go through. Yeah, I'm worried. But again, the first focus is on Congress, trying to get them to support states, and that's not just for people with disabilities, it's everybody. The second conversation that's happening right now is, if they're going to cut within the realm of disabilities, where would they cut? And if you're saying don't cut here, well, that means they'll have to cut something more over there.
Right.
And so, advocates absolutely have the right to say, like, this is what I need to live. This is what I need to survive. This is what supports me. And don't cut this, while knowing that further cuts will happen somewhere else.
Yeah, it is scary. And a lot of people are worried about next year because of homeschooling and what happens when they're not going to get the services for that, because they're doing the IEP. They can't really go to the IEP right now because they need that one-on-one contact, and it's kind of difficult for those who are struggling. And so what do you recommend for those who are struggling? They can't go to the IEPs, they can't meet their social workers. It's a tough time for everybody right now. So any advice on how to handle all that? Or
and it's snowballing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just one area of our world that's having problems. It's every single area. So if you have a child who's home and you're homeschooling, that's hard. If you have a child who has an IEP who you're homeschooling, that's it's harder. If they're not getting the related services to their IEP, that just gets even harder. If I'm a person with a disability who has a child with a disability at home and we're doing it all, and I have my needs and my child has their needs, it just gets even harder. So advice, honestly, Michelle, do you ever get overwhelmed by it all?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, what do you do in those moments?
Well, I walk my dog sometimes if I feel better. Lately, I've been having a lot of sinusitis issues, so I've been kind of stuck in the house, not much going out. I like to go out and have fun, but with everything going on, I'm at high risk. So I have a heart condition and I got respiratory system. So they told me I have to stay home, and I'm nutting up here at the house because I'm like one of those people who like to go out, go have fun, go to the movies, and now I've been stuck here for 3 months, and I'm like, something's got to give. So
Yeah. And do you have any service providers that would typically come into the home, and are they still coming in?
I just barely got my services up this year because when I was in LA, I could never get the services provided for me. I kept on getting turned down, and they said I didn't have a disability. There's nothing wrong with me. So I kept on getting denied. So I didn't get the services that I was supposed to be getting. So when I moved up here to Oxnard, I'm getting all these services. And then when I go up to Sacramento about a few months from now, the service will continue to happen for me. So all this right now is all brand new because I never had the services before. I never heard about regional center, never heard about Sage services until I came up here. Like I said, LA is so big, and you have I think you have 3 or 4 different regional centers in LA. So I know there's Harbor Regional Center, but I don't know the other 3. So.
So I liked what you said, because you asked me what should people do when they're trying to they're having problems in this area, they're having problems in that area, and getting services. What should they do? I like that your answer was you kind of just take a break from it.
Right.
When I get overwhelmed, let me just step back a little bit. Let me take a little break. You take your dog for a walk. When you come back to it, my recommendation is just take each piece one at a time. Focus on what you can while you can to try to get solved and answered. It sounds like you did that and had more success in Oxnard than you did in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Because like I said, Los Angeles is huge. They actually, when I first applied to Harbor Regional Center, I was borderline intellectual disability. And then it wasn't until I had my brain infection, I think it was 18, and that's opened up the whole doors because, that's when you guys opened up that 5th or 6th category for the I got denied at Harbor Regional because they said there was nothing wrong. And I go, well, I'm trying to get SSI. And they're like, oh, but there's nothing wrong. You can work. I go, yeah, to what point? I keep on getting sinus infections. I have a hard time breathing sometimes. And so it's difficult for me to get a job, to get a hold of a job. I can't work a retail job. I can't work at an AMC theater, which I used to do. But at the same time, with all these health issues, who's going to hire me? So I was like, yeah. So that's where I'm at. So.
And I appreciate what you're doing, which is continuing the advocacy, getting the word out. 5,000 followers is huge. Hello to everybody who's there now, or who'll be watching this in the future. I'm so glad that you're here with us. That's amazing.
And so I started because I wanted to get more involved, because I don't know if you're aware, but the reason why I got involved in the first place is because I got diagnosed with a chromosome called 22q11. It's a tiny piece of a chromosome. It's just like the second most to Down syndrome. And so, because you have over 200 symptoms, but each person does not always have the same symptoms. You have a heart condition, you have learning disability, you have schizophrenia, teeth issues. And so I became more involved in it because I wanted more people to be more aware of 22q. And there's other names besides 22q, but we wanted to get the word out. And so I started doing the podcast 8 years ago, and so it just grew. And so now I talk about different rare diseases. I talk about, causes and events, policies, and all the other stuff that people should know about, because I want them to have the same advantages that I have now so they can get more help instead of not, finding it later on where they're having difficulties, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And it's so important because, when I don't know about you, but when I'm going through a hard time, sometimes, it's happening to me because it's hard and it's happening to me. But in that, sometimes I feel a little alone in it. I feel like like in my head, I know it's not only happening to me, but but because it's so hard, I just feel isolated by it. I'm focused on it. I feel alone in it. When I find there's somebody else who has is going through a similar hard time, I don't feel so alone, or I feel like validated in how hard it is, or how difficult it is. It's oh, this is okay. It's hard for you. It's hard for me. That's validating. So what you're doing, these conversations you're having, and how you're creating access for people is so important, so that we don't feel alone when we're going through something, even though we each have to go through our journey on our own path.
Yeah, it's a little hard, and now that I got a little bit older, I'm finding more services. Before, like I was telling people, 1976 and 80s, you didn't have the technology you guys do now. Forget about it. We didn't have the internet to look up 22q11 or any kind of rare diseases. And so it's interesting because they keep on asking me how I got it. And I said I got it by accident because it is genetic, but nobody in my family has it. And so I took a simple genetic testing called FISH because I was trying to prove SSI that I did have a disability. SSI turned me down 3 or 4 times. They said, "Oh, you can work. There's nothing wrong." Da, 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 da. The usual drill. So the judge finally told SSI, "You don't see the whole entire picture. She has issues." And so that's when the judge finally decided that I do have a disability, and yes, it has to be acknowledged. But there are others like me who are getting similar turn downs, and they don't know where to go. They don't, some of them are out of state. They're like North Carolina because they don't have that much support system out there. It's very selective. Here in California, we have a variety of different options, and it's just, I wish we had more options out of other states. That's, so.
Yeah. That's great. How long did that SSI process take you from like beginning to end?
I've been fighting it, 12 years almost.
Wow. What kept you going through that?
My mom and dad, and they didn't know anything about it. They kept on getting frustrated because we kept on walking into the paperwork. We submitted the paperwork. Oh, we lost the paperwork. That's what SSI said. We can't find the paperwork. I go, we walked it in physically, hand walked it in. And then they said, "Oh, no, we can't find it. You got to resubmit it again." 3 or 4 times we did that. And they kept on misplacing our file. And then they kept on saying, "There's nothing wrong with you." And I said, "Look at my medical records." We had them to my medical records, my IAP meetings. And it just was on and on and on. I'm not getting that much. I'm only getting $600 a month. But I'm having a hard time finding work. And so I've been looking. So it's just like I said, nobody wants to hire me because of my sickness. And if I do want to get a job, I have to meet with Social Security, so I won't lose Social Security. And that's what I try to tell my friends. I go, there's these people who have disabilities, they want to work, they want to get an education, but at the same time, they don't want to lose their SSI. And so they're like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong." I go, we can't pass a test. We have memory problems or learning disabilities. We can't pass the state test if our lives depended on it. So I'm just like, so those are some of the examples that people are messaging me and saying that they have trouble, they can't pass the test, and they're having difficulties. So.
Yeah. And the question about security and benefits while getting employed and getting work is really important. If employment's going to mess up the benefits, how do I make sure that I have my needs taken care of? Are you familiar with the website of DB101?
No, I haven't. What is that?
Man, that is just a gold mine. It is just so cool. But it's in a few states, but it's certainly in California. And what DB 101, like Disability 101, but it stands for Disability Benefits, DB 101. So what it does is that if you have an employment opportunity, you can go in there and see what you can program in, what benefits you're getting and what the employment would be. And it'll tell you how the work will impact your benefits so that somebody can see how the system, ideally will support the transition. The benefit, the public assistance will go down as the employment goes up, but ideally, you're never below where you were and then employment keeps going. So
That'd be kind of cool. Is there a way you could send that into a link so that way I can share with my Facebook listeners? That way they know and stuff like that.
just confirm that I have the right one. So
I know that with Zoom, they only give us the 30-minute window.
what's that?
They only give us a 30-minute window sometimes with Zoom.
Okay.
They're special. So
Okay.
I always ask my listeners or my guests, Aaron, do you have a I know you don't have a Facebook page, or do you?
The State Council has a Facebook page.
Okay, I follow you on State Council. Do you
Good.
have an email, or where can they contact you if they have any more information? Because I think this could be another series of topics that we could get into, and people could learn about different services and resources. And I would like to have you back on the show to get more people involved with the resources for people with disabilities.
That's great. I'm going to put our Facebook page in here so you can follow that. I don't know why it's so long. This address is really, really long for the Facebook page. I thought it would collapse into a smaller one. So I put in the link for DB 101.
Okay.
And then put in the link for the Facebook page. I'm just going to test the link to make sure it works and goes to where we want it to go. And then I'm going to, yep, that's the State Council's page. And then I'm going to put in my email address.
Okay. And what I'll do, with your permission, I could probably figure out if I could copy, copy. Oh, I could copy. Haha, that's a good idea. Okay.
And there's my email address if others have needs or questions.
So yeah,
now
go ahead.
Michelle, as you know, I just want to make sure your listeners know that the State Council is, we have local offices that serve certain areas. So I'm in the headquarters office in Sacramento, and I focus on state capital types of activities. We also have 12 regional offices. The closest one to you said you're in Oxnard, so you're in Central Coast, and we have one in Glendale, and we have one in San Jose. But the San Jose is the one that serves you in Oxnard, if you believe it. I know it's a very long.
We have one here in
district.
Oxnard. It's Tri-Regional Center.
Oh, okay.
But I think we're going to be going up to Sacramento in about a few months, and part of my goal is to work with you guys, on the State Council. I've already talked to, oh my gosh, I forgot her name. Sonia
Bingaman, yeah.
Yes, and she told me, let me know when you come up, and then we can work from there, because that's part of my goal, is to work with you guys, get on board with the State Council, but be more an advocate, and then work more up north and do what I need to do. And this has actually been a better opportunity for me up in Oxnard, because in Los Angeles, not so much, but I know if I go to Sacramento, I can do more damage up there and get more people to know about different policies, different cuts and everything like that, what's happening. And I think that's what the viewers need to know. They need to know, understanding like the ABLE Act. They need to know about the food stamps. So if you guys post anything on Facebook, I post it on Facebook on my page, and I share it. And then,
thank you.
I try to make people more understanding what you guys do, because I guess they don't know who you guys are yet. So they need to have more, you see what I'm saying, more, they need to know who you are and get to know you guys better. Because when I say State Council of Disability, they're like, huh? Who? So
Yeah,
That's
we're the best kept secret, so that's good. And if you know who we are, then you got someone in your corner. Now, interestingly, so you're moving up to Sacramento?
yes.
Okay, great. Each of our regional offices has a regional advisory committee, so that's probably what Sonia was talking about. And oftentimes people get appointed to the regional advisory committee, do some service there, and then when there are vacancies on the state council itself, the council makes recommendations to the governor appoints all council members, and we typically draw from people who are on regional advisory committees. So you've talked to Sonia, you've talked to the right person, you're on the right track, that's great. One little just clarification, it was interesting that you said that we have an office in Oxnard for the Tri-Counties Regional Center. Now,
Yes.
regional centers and our regional offices are actually different.
Oh,
So as the State Council on Development Disabilities, we are independent, and we're supposed to be kind of a watchdog over the system, and that would be meaning like a watchdog over regional centers. So regional centers provide the services. You know, you
right.
go to there to get your service, talk to your service coordinator, get your IPP, work with the vendors to get the services. The State Council is like an advocacy organization. So we don't provide services directly, but we advocate for changes to make the system work better.
I am part of the RAC here for the regional center with
Good.
David. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's how I got all the emails and everything. And so I want to get more involved, and I want to make more impact with the disability community. I think it's time to get more people involved, get more resources available to them, because they need to know what's going out there, because they have no clue. They didn't even know about the food stamps until when you guys posted that up, I shared with them, because they go, oh, I have SSI. You mean I could get that now? Yes, you can. And I wasn't aware that if you had SSI, you could also get, what is that? Is it general relief as well? Somebody was telling me about that. So I don't know if that's true or not. But you can, if you don't make that much with SSI, you could qualify for general relief if you get food stamps. Food stamps I knew about. So they didn't know about that. And so they're like, where can I get more information? I go, okay, let me share this State Disability Council page, and I'll share what's going on. And they seem to like what's going on. So they need to get more resources, because they have no clue what's going on. And right now with COVID-19, they need all the help that they can get.
Yeah, thank you so much for getting the word out. Hey, speaking of the Regional Advisory Committee through David that you're on, you know, a long-standing member, I just kind of want to ask for like a moment of silence just to honor the passing today of Cheryl Hewitt. She is the chair of the Self-Determination Advisory Committee out of San Andreas Regional Center, longtime member of the Regional Advisory Committee that you're on. And it's just, I heard the news today and it was just heartbreaking to lose. She's such a strong advocate. And so I just want to take a moment while we're talking and just acknowledge and recognize her contributions, her advocacy, and her life that was very well lived. It's really sad.
I just met her, I think, on Zoom. So we didn't really get to connect with each other that much. So, yeah, we just lost somebody in the 22Q community as well. And so he was alone. He was alone. His name is Adam. And so he just died recently. So his family's like, you know, reaching out to the community as well. So that was just a little hard for us. So he was only 22 years old. Yeah.
So sorry to hear about that. That was really sad.
So Cheryl, she was in the wheelchair, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I remember her a little bit. So I think David will tell us in Zoom on Friday. So we haven't heard anything yet. So
It's very sad, but yeah.
Anything new and exciting that's going to be happening with the State Council Disability?
Yes. While we're sitting here, you probably got an email from us announcing that we were able to get 2 million pieces of PPE for people with disabilities and their family members. So we all know to stay safe, you're at high risk, and to go outside, you need protection.
Right.
We were able to get over 1.9 million masks and then gallon containers of sanitizer. And
Nice.
so those were delivered this week, and we've made the announcement because we're starting on distribution. If anybody is in California and they need PPE, this is for people with disabilities and their families, email your local regional office of the State Council. And you can find that. I'll send you the link in the comments here where you can find that. But that is huge, that is exciting, and we are really proud to be able to do this.
David mentioned that at the roundtable on Wednesday. He mentioned it a little bit, so he was kind of excited about it and stuff like that. So I didn't want to say anything right now to my listeners, but I wanted you to say it. So, so you're in charge of the top-notch guy, and
you teed it up, and you were exactly right. And I saw that as we were sitting here that the official announcement came across the email. So you probably got him, and hopefully your listeners are signed up on our email list to get it too.
Well, it looks like we're out of time. It's 30 minutes. I guess Zoom let us have a little extra bit of time today because I think we're having technical difficulties. Again, I'm going to be posting a lot of information for the State Disability Council. We're going to mention about the mask. Can they get them at the regional center? Will that be?
Regional Center has some, and the State Council on Development Disabilities has some. Yep.
Okay. And what about, so we could just reach out to you guys and then you want our address, or how does that work?
Yeah, if you email our regional office, so I put the post for our website, I put it into the chat. If you go there, you can find our a link for our regional offices. Find the one that's closest to you and email them.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. And
or Michelle, if you share the press release, the press release has social media links. So if you post to your Facebook, the press release has everybody's email addresses in it.
Awesome, I could do that. Okay. And this is Aaron and Michelle, and I'm the host of the Awareness Show, and Aaron is the Executive Director for State Disability Counsel, and we're going to be working together, getting more resources out for you guys. So I hope you guys be safe and have a good weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy Memorial.
Bye-bye.
Bye.